Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast. My name is Rob Brake. I tend to forget to say that, and I know it's in the intro, but, it's nice to just introduce myself and say hello to all of you out there. And, of course, as well, as usual, his name gets announced every single episode, Mr. Sandy McKay.
You never miss mine.
That's right, I don't.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's like, everyone knows that Sandy, and then like, who's that other guy that's on there with? And like, I don't know, man. We're going back in time because your audio sounds like one of the first episodes we recorded. What's going on?
Hey, well, believe it or not, things don't always go perfectly when we're putting these shows together. And so if it doesn't sound perfect today, that's because we had a little hiccup with our setup, getting things rolling for the show here. So I am excited.
You're in some kind of a closet there with a lot of echo, but we can probably fix it in post. Isn't that what they say?
That's possible. And I'm excited because we are having one of the reasons I'm in here today is we're setting up a new little podcasting room and media room and stuff. So it's going to sound way better in the near future and something our guests can look forward to.
I have a suggestion. Just take your microphone and turn it around so it's straight in front of you. I think that'll sound a lot better.
Like that?
Yeah, absolutely. See, we fixed it, I think.
Genius.
Beautiful. Okay. Everyone should go over to breakthroughreipodcast.ca. You all know that. You can listen to all the past episodes that we've done. You can get in touch with the guests. I think that's one of the more powerful things that you can do is go over there, and all of the people that we've talked to, most of them really like to engage with other people. So go over there. You can find their contact info, reach out and get some one-on-one time with some of the people that inspired you the most from our show. That's one of the things you can do. And you can also get our free gift.
Yes. The ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. And everyone knows this by now, but pick that up. You can get on our email list, never miss out on a show, never miss out on an update from us and everything we got going on, and interact with our guests that way too. You can find a little more info on them and what they're all about.
I put together some really cool little webinars to discuss purchasing in Costa Rica. So I'm going to have some info on that going out soon. And if anyone's interested, you can get in touch with me, of course, and get involved with those. But, it's just a nice, short, sweet, to the point, half-hour webinar and then question time afterwards. So we're going to be doing those. And, of course, more investor property tours in Peterborough, Ontario. And, yeah, you can get all that info there, too. What do you have?
Well, we might be collabing on that. I think we haven't nailed it down yet, but probably in August we might collaborate on something up around Peterborough with.
We should probably start to talk about it. I know you like to go on vacation, a lot of nice long vacations. So,
hey, August, man, this is August. This is prime vacation time. I'm gonna be up here working. You're living a vacation, so come on.
Yeah, I've gotten better, but like for the first year I was here, I forgot that I wasn't on vacation. But I'm getting a little better now.
Hey, Costa Rica, you gotta make the best of it.
That's right.
What do they call it? Pura Vida?
Pura Vida.
Yeah. It
means pretty much everything. People say it for hello, goodbye, what's up, how are you? If something goes wrong, you're in traffic or your car breaks down, Pura Vida. So, yeah, it's pretty much used for everything. Anyway. You should also go over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps us immensely get out there to everybody who could use this content that we share every week, 2 weeks. So please go over there and do that.
Well, this one's important because we're talking. People really need to hear this one. They need to hear legal stuff. They need to not get caught up in issues around that. And they need to be connected with good people that understand that, like our guest we got coming up.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Cool. Want to welcome Shawn Quigg to the show here. Welcome, Shawn.
Hey guys. Hey, Rob, how do you go on vacation when you live in Costa Rica year round?
I don't. That's the problem. I don't go on vacation. Sometimes I'll like make myself go to an all-inclusive resort or something for a couple days every once in a while.
Different part of the beach.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, Shawn, in here. I'll read a brief bio on you, and then maybe you can add on to it. But you are not only a real estate lawyer, you're also a real estate entrepreneur and an active investor, and have been investing in real estate in Canada for quite some time. When you're not participating in the REI community, you also, I know you love your dog. You have your partner and your dog, Pluto. Is that the name?
That's right. Yeah.
Lots of photos with them, and you do some other cool things: curling, golf, hockey, golf ball, and but I know you love real estate. I know you've been a great ambassador of our show and great listener, and taken up some of the things we always tell people to do, which is go engage with our guests and learn and connect with them and build some cool stuff together. And one of those things we're going to talk about later on the show is a cool new venture you have coming with one of our past guests. So looking forward to getting into this. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you. So, Shawn, tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate investing.
Sure. It was completely by accident. Before I became a lawyer, I obviously had to go to law school. And before that, I had a career with the federal government, but I wanted to do something bigger with my life. So I applied to law school and got into Windsor. And a buddy of mine who was from Windsor told me if that's where I should go, then I should probably buy a piece of real estate, and instead of renting, because real estate was so cheap in Windsor at the time. And so that's what happened. I got into Windsor. I bought a 5-bedroom house, a 20-minute walk from the school, for $130,000, and ended up filling the rooms with other law students. And it wasn't long before I was cash flowing. And, I didn't realize what house hacking was at the time, or that it was even a strategy. I thought I was simply trying to live for free and have a little bit of beer money, which is important when you're in law school, especially at a place like Windsor where everyone's from Toronto and everyone wants to have a good time on the weekends. So it grew from there. I love school so much that I decided to add a business degree to my law degree. And I was in one of my business classes where I learned that cash is the least valuable asset of a corporation because it loses money on inflation. This was counterproductive to really everything I'd been taught growing up. And so I decided to take what I had and invest in a second property. And I took the lessons I learned from the first one. I bought a way bigger house, way closer to the school. It had 2 living rooms. I turned one of those into a bedroom. And all of a sudden I had a 6-bedroom student house 2 blocks from the university. Filled that up, started cash flowing there, and started thinking, hey, this is not bad. I could use this to pay off my student loan to get through law school. And so, it sort of progressed from there. As I got into articling, I was articling at a firm on Bay Street, and started to think, hey, maybe I might want to pair my profession with my interest, being investing in real estate. And that's really where the idea for Prosperous Law came. And that is my law firm, my new law firm that is only for real estate investors. You've to work at the law firm, you've got to either understand investing or be an investor yourself. And that's really been the journey. And really the design of the firm is to create value out of a necessary component of the real estate business and the business of real estate, right? Instead of, everyone needs a lawyer to be able to buy and sell real estate, or for the most part, mortgage real estate in Ontario. But, my view is there's so much more that could be offered to people. And so I'm trying to become more than that necessary component, but really create a firm that adds value where value has not been added before.
Sounds awesome, and I think that's obviously in line with a lot of our listeners and people looking to buy and sell real estate as a career or just on the side and invest. There is a major difference between, just like any industry, working with a realtor or mortgage professional or accountant, or obviously lawyers now who actually do this themselves and have experience, hands-on experience working in that industry, not just buying and selling real estate, buying and selling, investing real estate is a little different. There's lots of little things you should be aware of, and there's a lot of great people that know little pieces of that stuff, but really diving in and doing it yourself and having that experience of, in your case, kind of living with your tenants or having tenants and dealing with all those different things. Like there's just so many components, and having firsthand experience is hard to replace.
I think everybody kind of has that similar story, where, like you mentioned, living with your tenants. I think people may start out that way and quickly realize that it was fun at the start and you learned a lot, but maybe not the best the best way forward. But I wanted to ask you, so as far as a law firm goes, what makes you guys different? Like what kinds of things would you say that your knowledge helps these investors with?
Well, that's a great question, Rob. The average real estate lawyer knows how to read a title search, right? Knows how to get bank financing from the bank into the trust account in order to be able to buy. Those are all the basic components of a real estate transaction. Obviously, there are more. But when it comes to investment real estate, there are nuances. There are things like dealing with existing tenants, adjustments based on those tenants, whether they're existing last month rent deposits or current rents, making sure that those are adjusted for properly and done so in accordance with actual math. We look at due diligence, right? So as investors, right, we do a lot of business and financial due diligence, right? Does the property earn a good enough return? Did the expenses that the seller told me, what they were on the listing, do they match reality? Does the revenue match reality? That sort of thing. But legal due diligence, there's more to it than just running a title search. There's a whole number of searches that as a real estate investor, we want to have access to the results for or from, so that we're making a good informed decision. And on top of making a good informed decision, be in the best position to negotiate the best deal possible for us leading up to closing. Right. So there's a section of the standard OREO agreement of purchase and sale that deals with title searches and requisitions on title. Right. And there are components of that particular clause that can be leveraged if searches come back to show that perhaps there's a work order, or perhaps there's a zoning issue, or perhaps there's a fire department or a fire code issue or an electrical issue, right? And so as real estate investors, as the old saying goes, it's problems or profits. So these aren't necessarily times where we go, well, we're not going to buy. This is time to say, okay, well, this is how much of a price decrease I need. Otherwise, I'm going to use this clause to get out of this deal, and you're going to be stuck without selling your property. Or perhaps instead of a price decrease, it's better terms. Maybe it's a vendor take-back mortgage that gets added on. And so it's these little things. It's understanding that this extra due diligence needs to be done, not only to protect the buyer, but also to create opportunity for the buyer. And then knowing how to use the results of those searches to create the best deal possible.
I think this is one of the best things because like somebody listening out there might be really getting sort of involved in real estate investing, want to go out there and start buying stuff, but they're like, man, my stupid brother just became a realtor and I got to use him, what am I going to do? Like, he doesn't know anything about investments. So I'm going to have to just take his word on it. But if they go, okay, well, this is great because now I can go to Shawn and he can help me with all those things that my friend realtor, right, who they're obligated to use, or they feel obligated to use anyways. Some people do for the first couple, and then they go, you know what? It's just more important to get my life in line. But let's say for those people, this is great, right? Because then you've got all that extra knowledge that, that the realtor on the investment side should have as well, but a little bit extra too.
Shawn, what does the agreed? That's a good point. And practical. That's how that.
I was
In
just
those
thinking like this
situations
would
so
be
many
great
times.
for somebody who, because there is a lot of times where people are obligated or feel
Yeah.
obligated. I shouldn't say they
Yeah.
are. Everyone can make their own choices, but a lot of times some people, because I've talked to people who, let's say clients that have bought with me, right? And then when it comes time to sell, they go, "Wow, this is like my cousin, so I got to sell with my cousin. I'm sorry, man." Like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
Yeah.
so I'm
Well,
sure there's other people in that same position.
Shawn, what does that? So you mentioned some really good tidbits in there that you would do going through that sort of scenario. What does the average lawyer, real estate lawyer, just not really do that, or like how does that actually look in reality? Are they just not doing that, or are they kind of half-assing it?
It's not really half-assing. Unless you understand the business of real estate, what you're doing as a lawyer is making sure that your buyer is protected. What most lawyers aren't doing is taking the knowledge of the results of those searches and turning them into something else when the opportunity presents itself. Now, not all like that opportunity isn't always there, right? If section 8 says that the use of the property is an eightplex and the zoning report comes back and says an eightplex is allowed, well, there's really not much that we can press on there.
Right.
But if it comes back and says it's a fourplex, a lot of lawyers will say, okay, listen, you might have some issues with the building department down the road. Whereas for me, I mean, that's very easy. I'm going right to the seller's lawyer and saying, listen, like this is only a fourplex. The value of this property is almost basically cut in half.
Mm-hmm.
So how about we knock 100,000 off the purchase price? Now, of course, it takes two to tango, right? So the seller's got to agree. And this doesn't always work, but it's the thought process. It's the initiative to actually do it. It's actually considering that this is something that as a lawyer or as a law firm, I could do for a client to really help make a deal turn from good to great, perhaps, or great to really great, right? A single to a double, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times, the lawyer will present you with whatever the issue is, right? And you're left to kind of figure out what solutions there are. But it's nice that you guys are at least offering the suggestions to go along with it.
Right.
Actually, you know what? You hit on something that's a bit of a kind of a sometimes a pet peeve of mine, Rob, was just it's with I just try to say this without like beating up on people too much, but the people in general that are paid by the hour, which is typically like lawyers and accountants in real estate transactions and in real estate world investments, often I find is exactly kind of that's a bit of the mindset is like, here's the problem, do with it what you want, and
Right.
let me know. Whereas, often I always try and, as a realtor, I mean, I don't want to make the final decision for anyone, but I want to at least give them more advice to get, let's get this forward. And here's our a couple of solutions. And
well, as a lawyer too, you've probably run into all of these kind of things, especially if you're an investment lawyer. You probably run into these kind of things, and an investor yourself, where you do have practical suggestions that can work, right. And then also with the law portion behind it, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a number of times where just little things come up that can be used. Like I've seen sales where I'm acting for the buyer where the bank is enforcing the loan. This seller is going to lose this property, so it's time to make a better deal. Right? It's that thought process. It's thinking, okay, we know that the bank is 30 days away from foreclosing or power of selling this property. Maybe we need better terms because the seller's really in a tight spot. Now that's not necessarily great for the seller, but that's not my concern if I'm acting for the buyer.
Shawn, we talked about prior to coming on here, we were talking a little bit about VTBs and how that's kind of a confusing area for a lot of investors. It's also a great opportunity when used appropriately, and it can be a great opportunity. Often used in some bigger transactions, where people there's no mortgage on the property, and the seller, maybe it's a win-win there to be had. Can you go through a little bit about that process and how that actually plays out from a legal standpoint? Because I know I've had a lot of investors go to a course or go to some sort of thing and kind of understand the basics, but they don't, they don't really and realtors, actually tons of realtors have no idea how to put together a VTB clause or what it actually means. What does that look like? How do you add value in those sort of scenarios?
Well, I like to tell people the VTB is a real double-edged sword, right? On one side, it's a great tool for scaling, right? It means less money into a deal when we start. It means more deals as a result, because we're not limited by the amount of capital we have, or not as limited. But on the other side, it's really tough to get conventional financing on the small res, small multifam, single family home type deals where a VTB is present. And that's simply because the banks, traditional lenders are almost acting like a factory, right? There are so many deals and they get so many opportunities to lend that if your deal in this area, right, small multifamily, 4 units and under, single family home, if your deal is not perfectly curated to what they want, they'll just not bother, because there's 100 more of these deals waiting in line. And so the other side of the sword is when we start buying small res properties with VTBs, and we also want conventional financing, we're going to struggle to get the lender that we have in first position to agree to it. Unless, of course, the first position lender is going to be the seller. But presuming for a moment that we're negotiating a 15 or 20% VTB with 80 or 75% financing from a bank, let's say, that's going to be a really tough sell. And it's going to be that way for a couple of reasons. Number one, the bank wants to see that proverbial skin in the game, right? They want to know that the buyer's got something to lose, so that they're motivated to actually do something with the property, right? Actually rent it out and keep it up, etc. With the VTB, there is no equity. So the borrower really has not very much to lose. And so the second component of that is typically the lender in first position, the bank, is going to hire the same lawyer to act for them on the mortgage as the borrower / buyer hires to do the deal, which means as a lawyer, I've got an ethical duty to both people, both entities, right? Both the bank and the borrower buyer. And so if the bank tells me no VTBs or no seconds, and my client brings me a VTB, I've got to now tell the bank. I don't want to, but I have to, because I don't want to, because that's probably going to kill the deal. So what I coach my clients on is, if you're going to negotiate for a VTB, skip the bank financing. Go right to private and use VTBs on properties that can be burned or have their value increased by forcing appreciation in some way, whether it's tenant turnover and renovations and re-renting, or maybe it's rent increases, whatever the case may be. Look to use the VTB as a bridge between purchase and refinance. Those are the types of deals where it works. And there are a number of private lenders out there who work with VTBs who don't have nearly the constraints that the lenders do. And those are the types of deals where VTBs work well, because we've got no ethical obligation to the lender. The lender knows they don't really care as much because they're making a higher interest rate. And that higher interest rate, sure, it's painful, but it's better to pay that in the short term if you can limit the amount of capital you have to put in as equity on the purchase and take it all out, including the VTB, on the refinance.
That makes sense. Private VTB in the second, not a big issue.
Yeah.
Conventional, they don't like it.
No. No, once you get into the larger stuff.
Not impossible, but it's gonna have some big roadblocks, right?
I've done it twice in my investing career. They were both, one was a 5 unit, one was a 7 unit. Managed to get the bank to let me do 100% financing on purchase, but it's rare. I rarely see clients successfully pull it off. And, as soon as the bank sort of gets hesitant, I can't necessarily try and convince them because I also am a fiduciary to them. So I've got to make sure that their interests are protected as well. And sometimes that results in the bank just saying, no, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. VTBs, there's lots to them. That's good advice for in general. I think we kind of can leave it at that. I think if someone's putting together a VTB or thinking about it, they have some questions around it, I'm sure they can reach out to you and for some guidance on that. You're going to need a lawyer to help you through that process, anyways. And so it's good to get them involved maybe as early as possible. Would that be fair to say, Shawn, in that process?
Well, yeah, like it makes a lot of sense to start figuring out the solutions to the problems before those problems exist, so that you're prepared as an investor to actually address the problems when they show up. Like, let me tell you, it is the worst when someone, negotiates a great 20% VTB on a single family home that they're going to BRRRR and then rent out. And then they also want to close with, a big six bank. And we get 5 days to closing and the bank goes, oh, there's a VTB? No, thanks. Right? Nothing's worse. Like, let's find that out during the due diligence phase, during the conditional period, so that we can figure out how to make it work, or, rethink our first position lending strategy or whatever it might be, because we don't necessarily not want to take advantage of the VTB, but we definitely don't want to learn the hard way late in the process that it's not going to work as we originally intended.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Sandy, where, saying, explain to me a VTB and like, explain to me the structure of a VTB. You go, okay, well, it's not a one sheet of paper kind of deal. It's the same as like people used to ask me all the time, how do you structure a joint venture deal? It's just like, well, it's not one thing. There's so many different options, so many ways to do it that the answers aren't going to come out here in this 45-minute show. So yeah, just if you have questions around that or something that you were thinking of doing, make sure you bring it up right away.
Shawn, you've got a couple awesome things happening. You've got the new law firm, Prosperous Law. Am I saying that right?
That's right. Yeah, Prosperous.
Okay, that's super cool. You're also, which is kind of rare for lawyers to be entrepreneurial, but I would say you're one of those. And I'm saying that because you got a couple things. We got another cool new venture coming out that I want to make sure our listeners know about, because it's great to utilize in probably more so in some larger transactions, but really, I guess, hypothetically in any sort of real estate transaction. And tell us about that. Tell us about how you are helping people through upfront capital with their deposits and just finding more money for deals, basically.
Well, yeah, thanks, Sandy, for asking me about upfront. So upfront capital is a deposit lender, which is, in our view, really the last area of the real estate transaction that's not been leveraged. And that's because it's, without actually thinking it through, it's actually quite exposed for a lender. And so it's almost too risky. But what upfront does is it lends the deposit during the conditional period of a deal. Right. So you're right, Sandy. The company at this point is focusing on larger deals. We have a minimum loan of $100,000 for a minimum of 60 days. But we'll look at other deals. We'll look at anything from 50,000 and up to see if it hits the parameters. But in essence, what that does is it frees up an investor's capital to actually spend it on due diligence, and instead of having it locked up in a trust account for 30, 60, 90, 120 days, earning a 0% return. As I'm sure the two of investors, money partners, they don't want to put their money in trust during the conditional period because, like I mentioned, there's no ROI. And as a result, there's a loss on inflation and opportunity cost. And so what Upfront does is we've got a proprietary system to make sure that we can lend these funds and we're not taking too high of a risk, so that it really is a win-win. Like our tagline is make better offers and do more deals. And by make better offers, as a real estate investor, if you're no longer limited by the amount of capital you have to put down as a deposit, then you can make more offers because now that capital is readily available. You can also make better offers by offering higher deposits, which makes you a more competitive bidder on a piece of property. So instead of offering, a $10,000 deposit, offer $100,000, offer $50,000. And, in the eyes of a seller, this usually equates to a more serious buyer. As a result of being able to make more offers, you're going to be conducting more due diligence on more deals, which means you're going to end up doing more deals. The three of us know very well, money finds good deals. And the more deals that get analyzed and looked at, the more good deals get discovered or created, which means more money finds those deals. So this creates an abundance of opportunity for real estate investors, for money partners, for realtors, for mortgage brokers, really for everybody to do more and not be limited by how much capital they have to put down as a deposit during that conditional period.
I'm glad you said the one point that I love in that, which is I see a lot of practical use for it, is just putting a higher deposit than you normally. Like if you really, most investors I see are trying to put the lowest deposit possible. And I've utilized it in many, many occasions with clients or myself where you're, especially in competition, right? And you're trying to get that great deal that's out there and you're like, they're asking for a $50K deposit and everyone's putting $50K in because that's the ask and nobody's putting in more. And I've had that conversation so many times. We've won many deals in that case. We're putting down 100 instead of 50. We talk to sellers about that, right? The importance of a pretty high deposit. And so there's value to that seller client. When you're the investor trying to buy it, there's value in having that higher deposit. There's a little bit of risk in that, of course, like, there's a reason why it's more attractive to the seller. But when you're putting it in, you have conditions, you have your outs. It's you're going to have a lot more time for due diligence, especially on the bigger deals. There's time to figure all that out. The best thing is there just separates you from the competition by doubling, triple, quadrupling the deposit amount. It's so attractive to a seller. And if you end up buying the deal anyways, I mean, it really doesn't affect you much. It's a very small cost of doing business to get the deal. To help get the deal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a small cost. And when we're talking about deals at this level, it's really just part of the underwriting expense. It's right. It's not a meaningful or material expense as it pertains to a real estate investment that's going to be held for a period of time, or even a flip. Like, if you're buying a $1 million house that you're going to renovate and it's going to be a $4 million house, even if you spend $1 million on renovations and $10,000 on financing the deposit for 30 days, well, who cares? You just made $2 million less $10,000.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Cool new products. Yeah. Where can people find out about
that? Best place is upfrontcapital.ca. We've got our website explains what a deposit loan is, what it's used for. It really doesn't matter what you're buying. It could be land, it could be buildings, it could be commercial, multifamily, industrial, it could be a business, it could be business assets. It really doesn't matter, because from our point of view, we're out before the deal becomes a deal, before it becomes firm. And so we're deal and asset agnostic. But upfrontcapital.ca lists the type of products or type of agreements that we'll look at, lists our underwriting process. And you, of course, can reach me at Shawn@upfrontcapital.ca.
Sweet. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff on your site there to check out. So listeners should definitely go do that. I think that's a lot to cover. There's some great tips in there and advice and action items for people. One, go check out more about Upfront Capital, especially if you're doing deals in that space already. I don't see why you wouldn't utilize that as a tool in your tool belts. And the other thing I want to make sure people know about is where they can find out about your new practice and get advice and tips and all that through the law side of things, where can they find out more about that?
Well, first place to start would be prosperouslaw.ca, and that's prosper us, the word us, instead of the word prosperous. We chose that name because this is really a joint venture, right, amongst the professional and that power team member, the rest of the power team members, and the investor. And so when we look at it from an us point of view, this is mutual success, and that's really what we went for. You can find us at Prosperous Law on socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. And you can reach out to me, Shawn at prosperouslaw.ca. I should probably tell you that my title there is Chief Value Officer. My sole role is to find value for the people that interact with our firm, whether that's clients, whether that's other members of the power team, right? Realtors, mortgage brokers, insurance people, whoever it might be, and my staff to create more efficient processes and create a really fulfilling place to work, to create value and make a difference in the lives of others. I'm actually not going to practice law, and that's so that I can focus on those things. Creating tools for real estate investors is one of my tasks. I've actually hired a lawyer who's way better at this than I am, and he's ready to take on these challenges and offer tremendous value from the legal point of view. But in terms of finding us, prosperouslaw.ca and at Prosperous Law on socials.
You have a lot going on, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk to us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. It's my pleasure. I like getting to chat with you guys, and this is a great opportunity to get the message out and really see how I can help others.
And go over to the show notes if you want to get those links to get in touch with Shawn. They'll be there, so you don't have to write it down or stop your car right now or wherever you are. You can get in touch with them anytime. Just go over and look at the show notes and contact them right through there. Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
Sandy at freedomreps.com, or it's Sandy McKay on all the social channels.
Right on. People can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca, the old trusted email. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you listening again today. I appreciate you coming on, Shawn, and we'll see everybody next time.